Okay, it's an unbox for the Thieaudio V16 Divinity. This is a 16 balanced armature set, and this is a follow-up to the V14, which was one of the first IMs that Thieaudio released. It had 3 dip switches, multiple configurations. I was a fan of it. I still like it to this day. And this is the follow-up to it. Looks very nice. This is a box. We're going to unbox it, but that's kind of awkward, so I already did it. Let's take a look at what's inside. You get a nice wipe cloth for people like myself that have OCD and don't like fingerprints on anything at all. It's part of the reason I wear gloves. You got a case that's plenty roomy enough to fit what comes inside or what you might put inside, which would be the earphones themselves. You get tips. It feels like, I'm not going to crack these open and waste your time. It feels like maybe one of them is foam, and beyond that they're silicone. And this one I can see through, and it looks like the bores are a little bit wider on this one. So maybe these are wide stem. So these are slightly different sets of tips. Those are the SpinFit CP100s right there because I use those, so it's nice to have included tips and nice to have options, but many people have found what they like and usually roll with a certain type of tips. This is the clip that comes with the cable. These are the tips that come with the cabling system. 3.5 or 2.5 and 4.4 are sitting in their little bed, while I'm going to use the 3.5 because I use the ADI 2DAC to do all my evaluations. And it's got a nice 4-pin system. This works good with the Monarch Mark II. I've not had any problems. This is this set itself. It's got it's quite beautiful. It's got a theme that's kind of like autumn leaves. It's very beautiful. It's more beautiful in hand than in pictures, like the Monarch Mark II. And the Monarch Mark II had kind of like a lava, cracked earth thing, and this is really like the autumn leaves going on. And it's got the same cable that comes with the Monarch Mark II. I'll not waste your time. I will say that when you put fabric over earphone cables, you're increasing the risk of microphonics, just because of what microphonics is. Friction between this outer layer and the other inner layer. But I'll see if that in fact happens. It's a concern that you might have, so I'll try to remember to address that in the video and see if it is in fact an issue. Because it would be a shame to have such a nice cable system and have it giving off microphonics. It looks beautiful. And that's it. So that was painless. You didn't have to watch me struggle with the box, and I'll just stop right now. Move along. That's the unbox. That's what comes inside it. That's everything, right? Yep, that's everything that comes in that box. And that's the unbox. Okay, the bass on the V16 Divinity. It is an all-balanced armature set, obviously, so it's going to have differences in the replay versus planar set or versus dynamic driver. All of these things are audibly slightly different, and they have good and bad points. The V16 using tracks like Big Boy, Kill Jill, Radiohead Pack Like Sardines, and Question Box, Massive Attack Angel, very sub-bass dominant tracks. I thought that this sounded fine. As we traverse into the mid-bass, I'm listening for things like the positioning of a bass guitarist on a track that, thanks to the Monarch original, showed how very good this is at doing that, and then you play with an EQ. The bassist on Dire Straits sounds properly positioned. He sounds good. The snappiness of the pulls of the bass guitar, strings, and the releases are not quite on the level of a dynamic driver, which I would find to be the ideal on a good set, and it doesn't quite have the sheer resolution of a good planar, but it is typical for balanced armatures. It's doing it well. It's doing it in a way that's it was originally created for monitors and musicians on stage. It's not crowding out or blowing over into the mids and decreasing the perceived quality of the mids. So it's keeping the bass in its place due to physical drivers dedicated to this region, and it's doing it in the way that BAs do it, which is something that you enjoy or don't. But the accuracy of the replay of the low frequency, it's particularly in the sub bass and the mid bass tuning and how it impacts vocals and bass guitars and also drum kits, seems to be fine. There's nothing worth noting about the bass that's stepping out in an extraordinary or unfortunate way. The bass is done well. That's the bass. Okay, the mid frequencies. This is a place where, for my library, guitar, parts of the drums, vocals really, piano. Most of the instruments are in the mid frequencies, and too much bass is going to blow them out. Not enough bass is going to make them seem dry or anemic. I think that the mid quality on the V16 Divinity is probably its best point, though the upper mids are kind of exposing where BAs have. There's parts of the frequency response where BAs do really good, and then there's a part where they seem to not, and that is the upper mids. If you listen to something like Dreams by Fleetwood Mac, and here you go again, you say you want your freedom, stuff like that, or Neil Young, Old Man, Take a Look at My Life, the upper harmonics of vocals, where you get I think the fundamental region for male and female vocals ends at around the same point, roughly at 1.5 kilohertz, and then beyond that you got the harmonic extension. I don't know that balanced armature is the best type of transducers for handling that region for my ears and my preference. So I think that the mids are good. I think that the upper mids can sound a little bit rough, and to be specific, Dreams on Rumors, Stevie Nicks' voice, Old Man by Neil Young. Neil Young, let's be honest, he's got a slightly offensive voice anyway. So I think that the mids sound good. I do think that the upper mids would be maybe not the... If I had to pick a point so far that I would think is not good, sub bass is fine, mid bass is fine. The lower mids are good. The upper mids, a little bit of roughness going on right there, particularly with the vocals. Didn't really pick it up with electric guitar, acoustic, or anything else, but the vocals, it did kind of step out. So that's the mids. It's good. There's a lot of other options, particularly the U12T, which is more expensive, but I think that the slightly subdued tuning of that set in that region is a step up from this. So that's the mids. Okay, the treble. The treble is mostly harmonic extensions of really everything. I'm listening particularly to things like Coda, the cymbal strikes by John Bonham, which are repetitive, and my brain can start to focus and listen to them again and again and again, and I can go back and listen again and again and again. There's no sense if the treble was maybe prematurely dipped, which can give the impression that the drummer is muting his cymbal when he's actually not doing that, because the tail end, the decay, is diminished to the point where it sounds unnatural. That's not the case with this. I think that the treble tuning is fine. It goes out to, I think, around 13 or 14K before it falls off. That's enough to give most people and normal hearing range a sense of completeness with the harmonic that extend, the second, third, fourth, fifth order harmonics that extend out there don't sound to be treated in a way that's unnatural or stepping out to my ear. Cymbals in particular is something that I've been talking about for years. They sound fine on this set. Listening to the glockenspiel on Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run, I thought that sounded fine. Boston, Foreplay, it's been such a long time, all the stuff that they're doing, Mark Schultz and them, I thought that sounded fine as well. A sense of space and positioning like you might get from Freebird, off of the One More from the Road, where Ronnie Van Zant's behind the mic, and he's, you know, what songs that you want to hear, and there's people out on the left, and then when it starts the piano and the people start rising, you can have a sense of kind of being in a larger space than you are, because you've got earplugs in your ear with little speakers in them. This is a kind of a psychoacoustic illusion, a trick that's happening because of microphone positioning. It sounds actually pretty good on this set. There's no sense of claustrophobic or polite, intimate, as some people might call it, to be polite. I thought that this does fine with this track, also Dixie Chicken by Little Feat, so if you like live tracks, it'll probably do fine. The good points of this set are it's all balanced armature, and so the drivers there's multiple drivers, there's 16, they're dedicated for certain frequencies, and they're tuned, and they're not going to interfere with what's next to them on the frequency response. The downside of it is you might not get the slam that you get with a dynamic driver in the low end, and ESTs are getting really good, especially quad form, so you might want ESTs. I don't know that you really need to have them. I didn't really think of that till I brought it up right now. I'm just thinking of my S tier list and what my preferences are. There's bias there too. I see 4 ESTs, I'd see a graph, I listen to it, find it to be appealing, and suddenly I'm falling in love with it. So there's that too. recommend it. Alternatives to this would be more money for the U12T. It would do everything that this does and probably deliver the upper mids in a little bit more of an appealing way, or natural to my ears. But it's going to cost you a little more money unless you buy it used. Entry level thing that would be similar to this and that it has extension, more extension actually, and an elevated low frequency would be the Audio Lokahi. So that's another set to keep in mind. So this is the V16 Divinity. I like it. It looks like a flagship. It sounds quite good. And it would be up to you to decide if it's something that you would like to have. Does it compete with the MEST Mark II? For me, no, it does not. Does it compete with, let me think of another $1,500 Sony IR Z1R? Interestingly enough, that would be more of maybe it would be. Where the Mark II would be no. It might be for the Z1R because the Z1R has a fit issue. It's heavy. Some people find the dynamic driver tweeter to be a little bit too much for them. I don't find that to be, but that might be something to consider as well. So look around, check out other reviews, and get more information. 1,600 is a lot of money. Knowledge is power. And that's it. I'm out.